And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Today we're talking about Code Vein. Now, first off, sorry if I sound off. I'm extremely sick, but a lot of people asked me for this one, so I'm here. But I'll keep it brief. Just a quick one here. Code Vein is a weird one. It's a weird game. I feel like we've been anticipating its release for a really long time after multiple delays, but thankfully, this Bandai Namco game has made it to the finish line. And, really, I'm glad it did. This Souls-like game definitely has things I can nitpick. I think it's like an okay game, but I think it has a lot of charm, and I think because of how unique some of it is, it scores more points, and I can totally see it becoming a little bit of a cult hit. I've been playing a review copy, and this footage is captured from the PC version. But anyway, Code Vein is, like I said, a Souls-like game. By that, I don't mean it's just hard. It contains gameplay elements and concepts and systems directly inspired by From Software's works. You go on runs, you collect souls, you use them at a campfire to level up your character if you're good enough to get back to one safely. You pick up expendable items from enemies that allow you a one-time use to cash in on more souls. You do backstabs, stuff like that. Oh, and they're not called souls, it's called haze. There's a lot of lore stuff here, but combat is extremely deliberate and fully action-oriented, but based like a chess game. It's about learning your enemies and mastering when to block, when to dodge, all while carefully managing an energy bar that depletes extremely fast. There are twisty branching paths and boss battles behind shrouded foggy doors. Yep. Now, what I'm all about is the special stuff that Code Vein brings to the table. Namely, the fact that this game is anime as hell. Like, it's extremely anime, in case you didn't realize by now. And with that comes a lot of story, dialogue, and cutscenes that I wasn't quite expecting. There's a whole world here dominated by vampire-like people called revenants. And it's a bit on the post-apocalyptic side, and everyone is starving for blood. There's a lot more to it with, corruption and all the stuff that the game kind of immediately dumps onto you, but unraveling it all was part of the fun for me. I mean, the game can be goofy, but it takes itself fairly seriously, at least with the usual melodramatic dialogue, and everything can kind of feel like the end of the world, and there's stylish, flashy action cutscenes and lots of big, bombastic music and piano sonatas. But it also gets a lot of downtime with a cool hangout home base with characters to interact with, and there's a full character creator that I think some people are really gonna go nuts over. And don't mind me, my character, I'm not very creative, but I think the depth here is really, really good. You can make your own sad anime vampire guy. Now, I do wish there were more options in the way of clothing and stuff, but the amount of accessories and belts you take on, as well as scars and makeup and over-the-top hairstyles, is really fun. And you can go back and change most of it whenever you want. You can look pretty ridiculous, and it can make some of the cutscenes and moments a lot funnier. Now, combat-wise, there's quite a bit going on. There are insanely large, heavy hammers and broadswords, regular swords, and bayonet guns. You can also throw magic, but the bayonet guns, that's where I stuck with it because it felt different. Now, you're allowed to equip yourself with a certain designation that you can swap between that allows you to access certain active and passive gifts. You can trigger more abilities, be it a buff, a magic blast, or a teleport dash, etc., to a mappable prompt that's brought up by holding one of the triggers. You also have to manage your, Estus Flask style health regen, a substance called Ichor, and you do these flashy blood drain attacks as well as backstabs that feel slightly different from the stuff in your average Souls style game. Code Vein so far to me brings enough new stuff in the traditional combat that it kept me playing. Plain and simple. There's quite a bit to grasp, and I feel like I'm only just getting the hang of it all. To be honest, I'm also really bad at these styles of games, but the tutorial does an okay enough job, at least once you get over being slightly overwhelmed with all the info. One thing I enjoyed was feeling the strong emphasis on using your currency strategically, not just for leveling up, but also to keep your weapons upgraded and up to date. Your gear's gotta be just as good as you, or you're useless. Progression is satisfying, but making actual progress through the levels isn't so fun. I think it's just because they're mostly fairly linear and straightforward, and only the occasional very clear twisty path lead you to an alternate way or, towards some loot. I like the look of them, spooky weird science caves, parking garages, abandoned downtown city streets, swamps, bombed out cars. It's unique looking, but even still, graphically, textures up close don't look so hot though, even on playing on a high-end PC. The visuals do perform fine and well enough, but there's not too much exciting to them other than the great character designs. Frankly, I just found the levels themselves really, really boring and uninspiring to play in. You know, actually going through the levels, there's not much mechanically exciting about them. Most of the time, enemies are just kind of standing around. You know, there's the occasional surprise monster closet, but I didn't have the sense of discovery I really felt strongly about in other games in this genre. That and the enemy types I found myself just getting bored of really quickly. There's not too much to any of them. I mean, bosses, what I've seen so far, are cool and unique, thankfully, but the standard enemies, not so much. There are some nice side diversions at least, though. Like I said earlier, there's the home base hub with shops and characters, and from here there's optional dungeon excursion style things triggered by an NPC that kind of feel like Chalice dungeons. The levels themselves are kind of copy and pasted, but the enemies can be way more difficult, and there's a good challenge there that I really liked. Then there's also, you can access the hot spring, where you can chill out and relax with the other characters and use pieces of story you've collected throughout the game to piece together and arrange what happened, thanks to your character's amnesia, of course. That stuff really is a good example of what I think like Code Vein brings to the table. It's a standard formula, yeah, sure, but pepperings of coolish stuff here, like fun side diversions, really great over-the-top character designs, tweaks and variations and depth to combat, and some awesome emo anime vampire stuff. That's the stuff that I think kind of redeems some of the weaker elements of this game. It certainly feels like something special, and even if there are some parts of it that are dull looking or feeling, and some aspects that aren't absolutely perfect, it's still a very unique game that I gotta give points for that. For it to feel so incredibly unique despite it being in a genre where there are tons of games trying to follow a similar formula, I commend Code Vein for that. I think it will definitely find a fan base. Overall, like I said in the start, it's an okay game, you know, it's decent, but I think some of the unique stuff makes it feel a little bit more special. That's it really. I think if you're an anime fan and a Dark Souls fan combined, I'd say give it a shot. I don't think it lives up to like what the concept of it was on paper. I think mostly just because of like the level design, and there's not a lot of mystery, and some of the story is muddled. But ultimately, I still think if you were excited about it, you have every reason to still check it out, because it is definitely good. It's not a failed experiment. That being said, I think Code Vein 2 could really amp things up. If they do get into a flow, I would love to see something like that. But of course, this is a before you buy. I need to go before I pass out. I'm so sick. You know what the deal is though. I gave you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinions, so now I want to hear yours down in the comments. If you were looking forward to Code Vein, let me know what you're thinking so far now that reviews have dropped. Maybe this is a game that wasn't on your radar, but now it is. Maybe you're an anime fan. Maybe you're a Dark Souls fan. I don't know. Whoever you are, I want to hear from you down in the comments. But if you enjoyed this video and maybe at least learned something from my sick self, clicking the like button helps us out a ton. We really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.